everyone, it is week 11. We are at the almost halfway point of season 1, and remember, this first 12 episodes are about, seasons of your life to help you get into a deeper relationship with yourself, with other people, to help you be your most authentic. And so what I've tried to do is start at some fundamental, not easy, nothing is easy about doing this, but fundamental places where you can grow from. So like self-worth and choices and discipline and accountability can be more like foundational building blocks, whereas last week's topic, integrity, and this week's topic, humility, and next week's topic, which is going to be identity, those are kind of harder to not put a finger on, but they're sometimes harder to do. I don't even know. Everything's hard to do, right? Or maybe it's just for me. I know I struggle. I'm pulling out things I struggle with this week, and last week and next week. Definitely struggle sometimes with integrity. I certainly do struggle with humility. I think that it is sort of human nature. I don't think I'm special. I think it is human nature to kind of get sort of excited about the work we do, or get excited about ourselves, kind of puff ourselves up a little bit. And that idea of humility and staying humble sometimes can be really tough, because pride is sort of like sneaky. It sneaks, Pride is, I would say, the worst of the 7 deadly sins. Pride is the worst in my mind, because aside from the fact that it sneaks, it's what caused Satan's downfall. If you know anything about biblical literature, I'm not bringing anything profound to you to say that Lucifer was one of God's very high-ranking angels, up there with Michael. They both kind of worked their way up, and Lucifer was made in the whole pattern. Ezekiel talks more about this for those of you who are interested. And it's this idea that, he was beautiful, intelligent, creative, and up on the same level as Archangel Michael, both of them guarding Jesus's seat, Jesus's resting place. And Michael was content to serve, and Lucifer was not. And he was very adamant about sitting on that seat and feeling that he was worthy to sit on that seat, and kind of that he was worthy to be God. And if you know anything about like Frankenstein, the text, you kind of get that weird dynamic relationship between the creator and the creation. And you get that, it's an idea that also models biblical literature, because Satan, as the creation, really wanted to play God, and he still does, which I'm not getting into right now. But that idea of pride, that was Satan's number 1 sin. And even before original sin in the garden, all that crap, we have pride as a huge detriment to being a successful, laborer in the vineyard, if you will. So, or a successful person. So, I would say the opposite of pride is, of course, humility. It's staying humble. It's being humble. It's knowing that, there's better and there's worse. You did a great job today. You might not do a great job tomorrow. And it's always keeping yourself in kind of that right frame of mind, that you're grateful, you're humble, and you are appreciative. It's really what it comes down to. So when you keep humility at the forefront of your mind, what happens is that you have less of a chance of pride sneaking up on you, and less of a chance of hitting a big stumbling block, like a life stumbling block. There's a reason they say pride goes before a fall. And it's true. I mean, a lot of times what gets, CEOs in trouble, or what even got me in trouble, is this idea of you feel invincible, or you feel, invulnerable, or you feel irreplaceable. And the truth is, nobody's irreplaceable. Nobody's perfect. And the work that you do is probably great, but it's not the best work that's ever been done, and it's not the worst work that's ever been done. And there's always someone better and there's always someone worse. There's always someone prettier. There's always someone smarter, right? And it's that idea of keeping yourself kind of in check. And so how do we stay humble? Because there's a fine line too, not just between like pride and humility, but being a doormat and being humble, right? You don't want to have that sort of, not saying there's anything wrong with a servant mentality, you know, have a servant heart, but you know, we're here to serve the people or help the people. That's a fine idea. There's nothing wrong with that. But also, you're not here to be a doormat either. And I think a lot of times people who are like trying for humility sometimes get doormat mentality, right? And so you're not here to let people walk all over you. You're not here to think you're better than anybody. And it's that fine line of navigating those two spaces successfully. And some days it's easier than others. So a lot of it has to do with, I was going to say staying humble. That's not helpful, right? A lot of it has to do with knowing that, okay, let's say you're at work, right? You're at work and there's a problem that nobody can solve. And people have been really like thinking about it for weeks and kicking it around, and you overhear something and you overhear something and you get an idea and you have a fresh perspective on it. You haven't been working on it for weeks. And so you go to the person that you know who's working on the project and you say, hey, listen, I couldn't help but overhear, you know, you guys are having a problem. And I thought, I don't know if you guys have talked about this already, but here's a solution. And the guy that you talked to was like, wow, nobody's brought that up and that actually works perfectly. Now in that moment, that's where humility comes in. Because on one hand, you can be tempted to be like, look at me go, right? Or you can be like, oh, well, glad I could help. You know, go back to your cubicle, do your job. Or you can be like, I'm sorry I even came over. I should have not even said anything, right? And so what it comes down to is the best route is, I'm glad I could help. I'm glad that worked. I'm gonna go back and do my job. We get in the zone of pride when we start being entitled and we start thinking like we deserve this, or like, you know, well, you should give me a raise now because I came up with that solution for you, right? Like, no. And pride has a chip on its shoulder, has an attitude problem where like you think you deserve things because of who you are or what you did. And the truth is, like, most of the time no one deserves anything. Like, not really. You know, like, you worked hard. It doesn't mean that you won't get passed over for a promotion. It doesn't mean that your work will always get recognized. This is why it's so important to be comfortable with who we are, because we can't be doing things for outward recognition, because the world isn't going to give you what you deserve. Sometimes it'll give people who don't deserve a thing the thing. So staying humble really keeps a good energy around you. It keeps you in a growth space, in a space of abundance. So when you're like, hey, yeah, well, I'm glad I could help, you know, I'm just gonna go back over here and do my job. It's a respectful thing. It's very easy to be like, wow, I like the way they handled that. And then people want to help you. You know, it's like, oh, well, you know, you should come to our meetings more often. Oh, you know what? I really want to get your input on these projects. So staying humble, like most things, is a discipline. It takes discipline to stay humble. If you are someone who is, we have a whole generation of people who are used to succeeding. And anybody who's ever succeeded will tell you, you learn so much more when you fail than when you succeed. Because when you succeed constantly, it's A, not realistic, and B, it puffs you up. It makes you prideful because you're like, oh, look at me go. Check, check, check. I get everything I want. It makes you spoiled, really. When you don't get what you want, when you do fall short, when you fail in some way, shape, or form. You know, they say fail forward. They're right. It's that idea of use that failure to springboard you into a greater sense of self-awareness or a greater like growth space. Humility keeps you learning. It keeps you malleable. It makes you not have to fail so much, because you're happy when you succeed and you're still happy when you fail, which I know is so hard to do. And it's because you look at yourself as a human. You know you're not the best. You know you're not the worst. You know you did your best, and that's that. Again, I'm assuming that you're trying to do your best and you weren't trying to like cheat anybody or sneak anything or be deceptive, because that's a whole nother story, and that's not where authenticity lives. But humility, and I mean, that's another thing too. If you're cheating someone, if you're deceiving someone, if you are sneaking around, it's because you feel like A, you're not going to get caught, because like, look at me, of course I'm not going to get caught. B, you don't care if you get caught. C, you don't care who you hurt. And D, you feel like you make the rules, right? And that all comes out of pride. None of that comes out of humility. Humble people don't want to hurt anybody. They want to help everybody. You know, they also know not everybody can be helped. It'd be nice, but you can't help everyone. It's not possible. So, how do we live in the space of humility? It's a check on yourself. So anytime you do something good, I don't care if it's you wrote a chapter in a book, you had a hard conversation, you got an A on a paper, you got a promotion at work, you got pregnant, you got the man you wanted, you proposed to your girlfriend, any accomplishment, big or small, you know, it doesn't go to your head. And by that I mean you don't think, look at me go, I'm so great, I did this. The minute you start saying, I, too much, oh well, I deserve this, I did this, I came up with this, I did this, I did that, right? The minute you start getting in that realm, you know you're in trouble pride-wise. So humble people use we, they're solution-oriented, they are trying to advance the team and not the self. Additionally, people who are humble will take those great success moments and they will say, they'll keep it in perspective. Like, I'm so glad that that went well today. I'm so excited that I could achieve that thing, but I'm just going to keep my head down and keep my nose to the sidewalk, nose to the grind, so that I can, you know, have another great day tomorrow. You know, they don't get too high and they don't get too low. They kind of stay even keel. That's not to say they don't, you know, honor their achievements. It's not to say they don't celebrate. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they don't fixate on the good or the bad. Humble people live in the moment. Why I struggle with humility is because I don't live in the moment. I'm almost always living in the future, which is not good. I really have to get back in the present. I have to like check myself all the time. And also, you know, it's so easy to be proud of yourself. When you're succeeding all the time, it's so easy to be proud of yourself. When I was teaching, I used to always say, because I was good at teaching in the classroom, I was really good at teaching. And I used to say like, I'm so good at my job, so good at my job. Like, I'm so good at my job. And that's not a great thing to confess out loud, because A, like, first off, teaching is never a standalone thing. You have other people in the classroom, and where I used to teach, you know, you worked in teams. So nothing I did really came from me. Like, I was standing on the backs of plenty of other teachers who were probably more amazing than I was. But it was my first job and I was really good at it and I got really prideful. And obviously pride goeth before a fall, get too close to a student, and here we are, no longer teaching. Which again, what do? We fail forward. So pride goeth before a fall. I learned a lot from that experience. And had I been more humble then, but being humble now, I know that, like, did I mess up? Absolutely. Is it the worst thing that anybody's ever done? Nope. Is it the best thing that anybody's ever done? Nope. Am I proud of it? Not really. Am I ashamed of it? Not anymore, because, like, everybody messes up. So to think that I'm, you know, never gonna mess up, that's pride. That's really pride. I mean, I struggle with the root of pride because I struggled with the root of perfection. And when you think you're perfect or you're striving to be perfect, you're not being humble, you're being prideful. So perfectionism, we'll just remember it this way. When you're looking to be perfect, you're struggling with pride. When you remind yourself you're human, you're living in humility, right? That's how we have to remember it, because humans are not perfect. Life is messy. Humans are messy. People are messy. And so big accomplishments, enjoy, don't live in them. And you can stay humble. Big mess ups, think about, ooh, sorry, what did I do wrong here? Move forward, don't live in it. That's humility, right? You can stay humble by staying in balance. Balance is such an important discipline. Everything's a discipline, right? Balance is such an important discipline. But humility is hard because we do get impressed with ourselves. And the outside world doesn't help, right? You've seen too often CEOs who get caught up in the fame, the money, the power, and they start taking risks or getting selfish, and their companies kind of go into the ground, or they end up in some kind of legal issue. You've seen celebrities who get kind of too big for their britches, and like nobody really wants to work with them because they're like, oh, well, I can't go anywhere without this, Perrier water and this limo and this and that. And it's like, like, you're still a human, like you're still a person. It's why everybody loves Keanu Reeves, right? Because Keanu Reeves is so humble. He's like the perfect example of somebody who's humble, and that he takes like the subway, he takes commercial airlines, he pays for people all the time. Like, and the other day I just saw like somebody's luggage was overweight and he just like was there and he's like, hey, let me take care of it, right? Humanity, that's what it is. Humanity and humility are so closely intertwined. So what do we learn here, right? It is very easy to get caught up in pride. That's a very easy thing to do. And like I said, someone who's done it and someone who's felt the very painful effects of it, I am telling you, it is not a great place to be. And you can tell pride by perfectionism, entitlement, like living in your success for too long. Pride is a dangerous place to be. Humility, though, you can tell because you are giving yourself grace for messing up. You are keeping yourself in check and never like putting pressure on yourself to be something you're not, or do something, you're not defining yourself by what you do. You're in balance. Humility is balance, and it's honesty, and it's human, and it is knowing there's better and there's worse. That's really what it comes down to, is knowing that there's better and there's worse. So what steps can we take to being more humble? Depends on where you are, but like the humility to pride spectrum, where do you fall? Pride, we got like Lucifer, selfishness, humility with like Jesus, and selflessness. Like, where do we fall, right? Mother Teresa's like kind of close to here, and Hitler's probably kind of close to here. And so you're probably somewhere in the middle, right? You're trying to do the best you can, but like sometimes you get kind of caught up in like who you are and what you're doing. The world will humble you if you do not humble yourself. And I don't care if you're janitor at McDonald's or CEO or the president. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't care what level of work you do or where you are in society, because humility comes from the person, not from the occupation. You could have a prideful janitor just as you could have a prideful CEO. You have a humble janitor just like you could have a humble CEO. Like, nobody's more important than anybody else. So, staying humble and having humility will bring you greater success in things of the world, sure, but also your own personal growth. and your own self-development, honestly. So check yourself for where you fall, from selfless to selfish, from humble to prideful, and start trying to do some work on, okay, well, how can I be a little bit less impressed with myself? You know, what can I do to knock myself down a peg? Because like, really, I'm good. I'm pretty awesome, pretty unique, but there's nothing new under the sun. I'm not the greatest thing since sliced bread, you know what I mean? And when you start kind of putting yourself in perspective like that, like, yes, I'm awesome and Jesus died for me, I'm so great. But also, I'm not really that great, because without Jesus dying for me, I'm still a sinner, right? It's a fine line that we have to kind of traverse. And it's not an easy thing to do. First step is being aware of it. Do you have a pride problem? Do you have a perfection problem? Do you have an entitlement problem? Any of those things, you're chilling with pride, and you need to scale back and get into humility. And we'll talk more about that. So, obviously, you know I struggle with that too, so I'm right there in that boat, and we will just keep working on it, and we'll keep working to be our best and most authentic selves. And I will catch you back here next week for the last episode of the first half of season 1.